So we're hearing a lot of buzz around cloud native architectures that have the potential to dramatically impact the way CSPs are building their networks and doing business. In fact, the implementation of 5G seems to be the poster child for cloud native design and seems to be setting the bar incredibly high in terms of expected performance capabilities over previous radio generations like 4G and 3G. This must also impact the approach to how data center fabrics must respond. PJ, let's start with you. Can you elaborate on this? Is this being overhyped, or is it really something we all should take note of?
Sure. I think in this case, Pat, we can acknowledge the buzz and the hype. And this is a case where I think it's fundamentally deserved. From time to time in our industry, we develop new capabilities that create an inflection or a discontinuity from prior modes that actually improve our capabilities markedly. And that is the case in the case of cloud native designs and infrastructures. I would classify it as a combination of a North Star from a directional, aspirational point of view, as well as an imperative from a business operations perspective. Just use hyperscale cloud providers as an existence proof for being able to scale services conveniently and automatically on a very wide footprint, based on their use of microservices and modularity and very resilient open infrastructures as part of their operations. That's heavily software driven and automated in accomplishing their goals. There's no way to deny the value that's created for them and other parties in the industry. And so if you look at CSPs moving forward and where the extent to which they have a chance to become a part of that value chain, to play a meaningful role in the delivery and consumption of those services, it just opens the door to take part in that transition to a new architectural framework. When you look at 5G as one example of the current endeavors for CSPs, the portion of 5G that's inherently based on service-based architectures, it's fundamentally a cloud native service framework that has been defined. For many of the reasons that we said, there's every reason to embrace that paradigm and factor it into how the services are delivered on top of the data center fabrics that they are deploying. So because these technologies are a combination of a step function different in how they work compared to prior modes of operation, and because they create the flexibility and the agility that is so important in making these services real, that's why we tend to think of it as an imperative from our perspective.
Thanks, PJ. Bruce, maybe you can add something to PJ's thoughts.
Yeah, I think there's probably going to be a common theme we're gonna repeat today. The theme of the standardization of automation, right? I mean, if we look specifically at the 5G use case and how that's evolved from the appliance world to the virtual machine world to the containerized world, what really this is driving is a need to more efficiently, in a more automated fashion, deploy services somewhere. I mean, 5G is interesting because there's kind of two vectors to it. One is the fact that we now have these more modular microservices that we're having to deploy onto our networks. And the other is the need to put these functions, in some cases, as close to the end users as possible. So this is driving, edge cloud buildouts, hundreds, if not thousands, of locations. And that this, of course, if you don't have the right tool chain, introduces a massive automation problem. And now you have to operate and automate not just one or two locations, but hundreds, if not thousands. So I think to PJ's point, this is it's introducing a level of cadence and flexibility that we haven't seen in our industry before. I mean, the application world thankfully has led the charge with this. So I mean, if you look at 5G, the big change here is treating them as actual applications and leveraging kind of the tool chain that's been built by the applications world, by Kubernetes. And again, I think we're going to hear that term many, many times today, around how we deploy applications, how we standardize the interface for how we automate them. And now with the operator world, and of course, I'm speaking of Kubernetes operators here, we're seeing a means to automate the operational tasks of those functions using that same interface. So yeah, I think it's kind of a perfect storm, if you will, that we have the need to deploy a large number of functions where it used to be, a handful, 10 or so. And we're embracing Kubernetes in such a meaningful way with the 5G build out that we're starting to align better with how the application world has driven their own scale and their own agility over the last 3-4 years with the introduction of DevOps and CI/CD and all those good things that come with it. So yeah, I think it's an interesting time. And certainly if we look at what CSPs need to do, they need to be able to stand up 100 clouds just as easily as they could stand up 1,000 clouds. And that is a fundamental shift in how they operate. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting time. And I think if CSPs aren't in the right position to react and embrace this new agile world, they are definitely going to be in trouble.